Alex and Josh, then, thanks very much for agreeing to join me on this interview. And I was wondering if I could ask you just a very straightforward question, first of all. Who are you and what is it that you do? So, Josh, maybe you want to go first?
Will do. My name is Josh Goldsmith. I am based in Geneva. I'm a conference interpreter, trainer, and tech researcher, accredited at the European Union and at the UN. And I work as a freelancer, both here and in other places. And yeah, I've been a big tech geek for many, many years and pleased to do research and help push the field of interpreting technologies, especially, but also translation technology, all technology applied to language professionals, forward.
Yes, and my name is Alexander Drexel. I'm from Germany, but I've been living in Brussels for 12, 13 years now. I'm not even quite sure. I'm a staff interpreter at the European Commission in the German booth, and also very much interested in technology, always have been, and especially in tablets. And that's, well, we're probably going to talk about that, but that's how Josh and I met as well, and how Tech Forward eventually came about. Yeah.
And I suppose I should have said that I'm from the US, although I've been living in Geneva for 7, 8 years now, so quite a while, and in Europe for longer than that. And my working languages are many languages in the Romance language family, so Spanish, French, Italian, and Catalan into English, and Portuguese on the way.
Nice. And Alex, your languages?
Yes, I forgot to mention. So German A, and then I have an active B, and I work with French and Romanian, and Russian is in the works at the moment.
Nice, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Josh, just purely out of interest, whereabouts in the States are you from?
I'm from Florida.
Okay, okay, nice. I have I'd say a sort of irrational obsession with the USA. I like it very much, but I've not been to Florida yet, so that will be on my hit list, I'm sure.
Bucket list for the
Yeah,
future.
absolutely, absolutely.
Beautiful
I've
beach
got
in my hometown,
Yeah.
Sarasota, Florida, Siesta Key Beach. Definitely worth
nice,
a visit.
nice. You probably can't see from there, but around the top of my office, I've got license plates, US license plates of every state that I've been to,
Ah,
and the rule is that I have to have done something meaningful in that state. So at the moment, we've got 8 plus DC. So there you go, not doing too badly.
that's
DC may well
decent.
become a state sometime soon.
Ah,
We'll
wow.
Yeah,
see.
Okay,
yeah, who
really
knows?
cool.
We'll see.
Yeah, cool. Well, you guys are into technology, and I'm quite a technophile as well, so I have a feeling that we're going to get on very well. So one of you, I think, mentioned Tech Forward just now. So can you tell us a little bit about what Tech Forward is? Josh, you're on my screen already, so
All right, off I go. So Tech Forward is a little project, well, not so little anymore, that Alex and I put together. We had been offering training on technology for language professionals for years, and as of 2019, we became Tech Forward, empowering language professionals through technology. And we run a whole bunch of different types of educational programming for language professionals, interpreters, translators, bloggers, writers, what have you.
okay. So that's quite a recent development, in fact, to sort of formalize it, if you like, even within the last year. Would you describe it as a training company, or like how would you, if you're at a dinner party and someone says, "What is it?" in 3 words?
Yeah, I think training sums it up pretty well at this point. And yeah, we did formalize it, I think, last year. So in 2019, we've Josh and I have done a lot of projects actually over the last years, and then at some point decided that it would probably make sense to formalize the whole thing a little bit more and to
Mm,
to move into on-demand courses instead of doing ad hoc webinars and on-site training, which we still do, but we're trying to sort of put everything into a bit of a framework that makes it easier for us to produce the
yeah,
content. And yeah,
yeah,
And also that makes it more accessible to people
yeah,
across the globe. If I go to run a training course in, I don't know,
Lyon for
Budapest,
mm,
Lyon was the most recent one, I think. Well,
mm,
then
yep,
I have to go to Lyon, but also all of the people who are taking the course have to make their
sure,
way to Lyon as well. You have
sure,
to cap the courses if you want
hmm,
to have hands-on uh, opportunities for students to work with the trainers. So we've been shifting towards a different model, an
yeah,
online generally on-demand model, although we have been running quite a few webinars over the last couple months too.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
I can imagine. We'll probably come on to talk about that. But okay,
Yeah.
so on demand would be one of the sort of key features, I suppose. Yes, I have a little bit of experience in organising interpreter training courses in person. And around about this time last year, I was getting very stressed with the prospect of not enough people booking, and it kind of being my fault, or at least me being the public image for it. Thankfully, enough did, and it was fine. But I can certainly identify with some of the stresses of doing that. You described it right at the very beginning as a little project. Now, of course, as you say, it kind of isn't now, but I guess most things do start off as kind of little projects. Can you tell us a little bit about how Tech Forward started, perhaps?
We actually just looked into this today to be on the safe side in terms of the origin story, I guess.
We couldn't remember which one of us met the other when and how. And
okay,
but we are happy to confirm that we figured out the true sequence of events. And actually, Josh was working on a research project at the University of Geneva with a colleague, and they reached out to me about an interview on tablet interpreting, and that was, I think, the first contact.
So roughly when was that? Can you remember?
So this was late 2014, I think,
okay.
December
okay.
2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that turned into my first piece of research on using tablets for interpreting. And soon thereafter, we teamed up and gave our first workshop, a live workshop on tablets for interpreting in, I think it must have been June 2015 or July 2015, sometime in there.
Yeah.
And since then, we've never looked back.
Okay. Yes, it seems to have snowballed rather. Yeah. That's great. When you say tablets for interpreting it, particularly, I mean, we can come on to this, but consecutive, I guess, so note-taking and that kind of stuff.
Among other things, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of things you can do on a tablet actually as an interpreter, and that was sort of our first specialization, I guess. So we were both very early adopters of tablets, iPads in particular. And just as we discovered the technology, we found ways how it could be helpful for interpreters and how we could also teach others how to do it. So not just note-taking, but also, research, looking up things and all kinds of things to be,
Yeah, everything, I mean, from the preparation stage onto using a tablet for consecutive note-taking, onto hybrid modalities of interpreting, so using a tablet for SimConsec, where you record the speech and then you can take notes or not, or take modified notes and listen back to it and work from there. All of that's possible from your tablet. You don't need a fancy smart pen anymore, although you can use one. And then using a tablet in the booth, for looking things up. I'm a big terminology geek, as Alex will tell you.
Yes.
And so I have done a lot of work on how you can get the right terms at the right moment.
Yeah.
And then we also look at, everything related to productivity and your tablet. After all, if you're a freelancer, you have to issue invoices and all sorts of other stuff. You have to ensure data protection and confidentiality. All of that's possible too.
Yeah,
so we've covered all of those topics.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. And I can certainly think of one immediate use for in my own work, which is that when you're doing remote simultaneous, for example, the microphone tends to be quite a lot more sensitive than if you're in the booth, and you get the keyboard rattle that you get coming across. I can see that if you've got a touchscreen, that could be quite a neat little way of doing terminology research without being heard on mic. We can talk more about that if it goes in that direction. But to get back to the origins of Tech Forward and kind of what you're doing and how you got to where you are now, all your courses are online now. Is that correct?
I think. Well, we still have a long bucket list of topics actually that we want to get to, but we're slowly working down the bucket list to get the topics, I think, shaped into courses and put them online. So we've covered the tablet and iPad basics for now. We've done terminology. What we're working on right now is what we call the new frontier. So that will be remote interpreting and other new technologies. So that will be the next step. But we have a very long bucket list, to be honest.
And I'll just piggyback on that and say we do still run live courses, on-site courses, tailored courses for institutions as well. But more recently, we've been focusing on taking all of these great courses we've built over the years and making them available in an on-demand format.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about tablet, using tablets in interpreting in particular, and you touched there just on remote interpreting and that kind of thing. Can you give us a flavour for any other sorts of topics that you've covered in your courses?
Well, Josh, you've been working on one just today. Maybe
today I was working on
a sneak preview.
A sneak preview of our course on speech recognition for interpreters.
Okay.
So that's next, and after that there will be one on SimConsec itself.
Okay. Yeah.
In our webinar series that we've just run, we have 2 on note-taking, a few on terminology, speech to text, practice groups, audio and video for interpreting. We have a free mini course we just put out about, it's called Getting the Right Mix, which is about how you can hear two audio channels at once with one set of headphones, basically, both with hardware and with software.
Okay.
We've got another course in the works, which is our introductory course, it's called, Surface for Words, 5 tried and tested tips to boost your productivity. So this is the Surface version of our free basic course. We already have an iPad and an Android version out there. And I'm sure I've forgotten many, many other things that we've covered. Artificial intelligence is something that we have in the works too, but we can't let that cat out of the bag yet.
No, absolutely. I won't push you for more information on that, all in due course. Yes, the speech recognition thing's quite interesting. The possibility of being able to use that, especially for automatic terminology referencing and that kind of stuff in glossaries and stuff, that strikes me as being genuinely very useful, or picking out numbers for the interpreter so that you don't have to think too much and that kind of stuff. So all sorts of possibilities there, I'm sure, no doubt. So you guys are obviously massive technophiles. I guess if I may be permitted to identify with that as well myself as a technophile. But do you think you can ever have too much technology in translation and interpreting? And do you think it can sometimes be a hindrance, or are you guys very much kind of like, no, more the better, get the technology in there?
I sometimes hear that from colleagues. Is they say, Alex, you're so interested in technology, but I've always been very aware of that people have different preferences, and some people just don't like tech, or that it just doesn't work for them. That's totally fine. I think I've always been of the opinion that people should use what works for them. And when it comes to technology, I think what we're trying to do is show people interesting stuff that can really help them. So we're not just doing tech for tech's sake, I think. We're trying to show things and present things and teach things that are useful, that are interesting, that can make work a little bit easier for colleagues as well. I think that's what we're trying to do. And we always say that it's very important not to just take a piece of technology and then run with it, but to get started slowly, take baby steps, practice first, and then just progress slowly. And then when you feel comfortable with it, then you can actually use it for an actual assignment. So we're very, very aware and trying to make that clear to our students as well.
And maybe I'll just put on my researcher hat for a second and say, the jury's still out. There's not very much research on multimodality, so having lots of different sources of input as you're going along, but technology certainly adds a source of input. So you have to learn to work with it to try to bring the cognitive load that's associated with it down. And we also, researchers and software designers, need to think about how to present the helpful things that we're providing in the best possible way. So if the numbers are popping up, or the names are popping up, or the terms from your glossary are popping up, how do you do that in a way that's not distracting, but that is helpful? And there's some research about the lag, how quickly it has to come up, but this is really cutting edge stuff. And so we don't know the answers yet, but I can certainly confirm from the workshops that I've run, from the tests that I've done, that more work needs to be done on this to ensure that we're not overwhelming interpreters and that we're helping them as they do their work.
Yeah, I mean, it stands to reason, doesn't it, that the whole point of it is to help people, and if it is a hindrance, then that's clearly an example of technology not being suitable. Yeah, certainly. I mean, if we can come on to talk a little bit about the current climate with the dreaded coronavirus, which we're all pretty bored with talking about, aren't we? But we've got to accept where we are and think quite carefully, I think, about the future, haven't we? Because coronavirus looks set to bring about probably permanent changes to the language services industry. So what are your guys' predictions about technological developments in the short to medium term? Alex?
I thought Josh was going to go first, but yeah, I'm happy to offer my perspective. I think I probably have a somewhat specific perspective because I work for a huge institution. I'm not a freelancer, so it's a very different perspective, and I'm very aware that I'm in a very privileged position, during coronavirus. But when it comes to meetings, the interesting thing that I've seen in recent weeks as we sort of slowly resume our quote unquote normal work is that delegates are very happy to be back in the same room again. I mean, they can make do with video conferences and Zoom calls and what have you, and more emails probably, but they are really happy to be back together in the same meeting room, to be able to have these side conversations, to be able to sort of gauge feedback, which is very difficult in an online context. So that's been very interesting to see. And they're also very glad to have us back as interpreters to be able to have these multilingual meetings again, which is something that they're used to. And, of course, English is huge, but people, I think, are very happy to be able to speak their language again. And I think that that's been very heartening as well to see, because the delegates and meeting presidents have been very open about that and have been saying it's really great, to have the interpreters back with us. And that's been wonderful to see. So it's not the case necessarily that because of Corona, everything's moving online and it's staying online. That's definitely not the case, at least in my perspective.
Maybe I'll just chime in to say there are a lot of different markets out there. And in some markets that I work for, I think remote may become more prevalent. It may also open up new opportunities for new kinds of meetings, for that short 1 hour long preparatory meeting in advance of an international conference that everybody's coming together for. Why not make available the possibility of interpreting when your team is spread out? I think that these are the kinds of things that we're definitely going to see more of. And I think we're learning also about how to do it right. We're trying to help as well, share the knowledge that we know with colleagues in our remote interpreting from home course and how to do it right. And we keep updating it based on what's coming out. I do want to say, though, that I don't think the only technological change in our industry is tied to remote. I think that there are huge technological changes which may be overlooked, tied to how you can use tools to help you do your job better. And the tools are getting better. And we have to, I would encourage colleagues to think about how these tools might allow them to up their game.
You're reminding me of a quote. You've probably heard this, I'm sure. Bill Wood, I think the guy's name, in the 1970s or so, interpreters won't be replaced by technology. They'll be replaced by interpreters who use technology, which seems to be very much what you're suggesting there. I guess some people listening or reading will still be out and out technophobes, despite you guys enthusing very much about technology. What would your advice be for the sort of, dyed-in-the-wool technophobe who might be quite skeptical about some of the things you're saying? Maybe Josh, if you want to go first.
There's no obligation whatsoever to do any of this stuff. So if it sounds like it could be interesting or helpful, give it a shot. But don't expect to learn everything overnight. That's impossible. We don't learn everything overnight, and we're tech geeks, and still we have to test things out and try them. Slow and steady, take some baby steps. What we usually say at the end of every course is we've thrown tons of things at you, and pick one thing that you want to focus on right now and consider that for starters. So I would say the same thing to technophobes. You say to me, well, Josh, I can never possibly wrap my head around the idea of using a tablet for consecutive. Fine, no big deal.
Don't.
It's not
Yeah.
obligatory. You might enjoy using your tablet to pull up the meeting documents or to write down a few notes on the slides that the PowerPoint that you've been sent in advance, so that you can look at those during the meeting and that you have them right there. There are lots of different ways to go about this, and I would just say pick what works for you and consider it. And if nothing works for you, that's of course totally fine too.
I think it often also starts with an itch that people need to scratch. And for me, that was, I started hating how clunky and heavy and bulky laptops were, you know, to just bring to the booth. So tablets were just perfect. That was exactly what I was looking for. So I was sort of scratching that itch. And another thing that's interesting as well is just conversations with colleagues and just seeing, oh, interesting, my colleague X is using this tool to get this done. Maybe I should take a look at as well. And then sometimes you just see a colleague doing something and you're just intrigued or impressed even, and that can often be a good starting point as well.
Yes, interestingly, only a couple of weeks ago, a colleague, I think she might have done one of your courses actually, was suggesting really that I should get into iPads for note-taking for consecutive. Is it the Apple Pencil or the Pencil 2 or something? Is it? I'm not sure. But she said it's really, really good, and she was telling me all about the recording functionality as well. So yes. I certainly went and looked at the Apple website. That much I will confess. But I think I might have to wait to my birthday to to invest in that. So yes, you're right. You know, people talk, colleagues talk, and I guess you know, some of these good ideas, you know, sort of rub off, don't they?
We've seen a ton of change, I think, since we started doing this. More and more colleagues embracing technology, because many of them already have a tablet of some sort, and they say, well, why don't I see if I can use that for some professional purposes? Or, you know, it's not very easy for me to find the right terms in all of these glossaries that I've got scattered across my computer in tons of different folders. Wouldn't it be great if there were one way to quickly get to them? So that's the itch, I think, that Alex is describing, that often leads people to explore.
Yeah. And do you think there's, maybe this is a bit controversial, but do you think there is a generational thing going on there as well in terms of uptake of technology?
Absolutely not. In fact, I say this with no doubt in my mind, because in my research, I look at this, and many of the early adopters are not the youngest. There seems to be no link whatsoever between age and technology adoption. Obviously, there's more to explore around this, and I haven't focused on this variable concretely, but with what I have done so far, I've seen no link.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I haven't done any research into it, but just from my own experience and just, you know, evidence, that things that I see in my training courses that I do in-house as well, it's not a generation, it's not an age-related thing. I think there are probably other factors at play.
We're nearly out of time, and conscious that you guys will be an hour ahead of where I am, and need to go and get some dinner. But have you seen the film Moneyball? Either of you?
I think I watched it on a plane once. Yes,
it's exactly the kind of film that you might watch on a plane. Brad Pitt, of course, and the whole idea, you know, using technology to spot talent rather than having the kind of traditional talent spotters in baseball. And there's a fabulous line which he delivers in that film with huge arrogance to one of his experienced coaches, which is adapt or die. And I always sort of feel like that applies to the interpreting and translation profession as well. Perhaps it's a little bit too blunt, but you know, it sounds like from some of the things we've been saying today that that really, you know, we do need to be engaging with technology, and you know, not just using it for the sake of it, but certainly using it to make our jobs easier and the quality higher, I would think.
It may well make you more marketable. The research I've done shows that you stand out if you're using modern technology instead of looking a bit antiquated if you're not.
Sure. I'll have to think about the whole iPad for note-taking thing, because some of the work that I do is on nuclear power plants, and I'm just sort of having visions of dropping an iPad into a tank of something that it dissolves it, or or whatever. If it's a notepad, we don't mind, but if it's an iPad, that might be a different thing. Yeah. But yes, more on that another time, perhaps. Thank you very much for your time, both of you. Really appreciate
Thank you for having us
and asking you some of those questions, and look forward to being in touch again, perhaps in the future.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
Thank you, Nathaniel.